Welcome back, everyone, to a new episode of the Batfoot Podcast. My name is Damon, here with my co-hosts Matt and David. Today, we are going to go over the Diamondbacks and Blue Jays big trade. We have Nathan Eovaldi finally got his free agent deal. Carlos Correa still hasn't, which is pretty funny, and a couple other big news items to hit. But before we get to that, David, how are you doing this week?
Doing good. Just came back from vacation. It's a little bit tiring, but back to work, back to real life, and back to analyzing baseball free agency. Should be a good episode, fun time, and I hope everybody had a happy new year. And yeah, how you doing, Matt?
Doing pretty good. Just been out of town as well. Was down at the beach for the new year and had a good time with some friends. And it's pretty much it. Just hanging out. Happy New Year to everybody. I guess it's the first episode since Christmas, so I hope everyone had a good Christmas as well. And we'll ready to talk about a little bit of baseball. Free agency slowed down some, but there's still moves coming in, and we're getting close to the end of it. But yeah, we're getting. I think I saw yesterday, or maybe it was today, that we were halfway through the off season, at least until the big league for opening day starts.
Mm-hmm.
We're already past halfway to spring training. But
yeah, how you doing, Damien?
I'm doing pretty good. Spent the holidays pretty much just at home, hanging out with some family and just spend some time there. Watched the Tulsa shootout this past weekend, which was really fun. But 2023 has started, not the new year. That will start in like the middle of February for me, when pitchers and catchers report. That's how I do years, is when baseball starts, and when it ends is that. But it was a good holiday weekend. I'm glad to be back here and glad to be talking back with you guys. And let's go ahead and jump right in. Usually we are a baseball podcast, but the sports world was turned on its head yesterday with that Bills and Bengals game, and I just wanted to kind of hit on that a little bit. With the incident that happened with Damar Hamlin on the field, suffering a cardiac event or cardiac arrest. All our thoughts and prayers are with him, and I don't know if you guys have anything you guys want to touch on that, but it was very scary to see, and wishing him all the best and praying that he's going to make a full recovery.
Yeah, I can go first. I was watching the game last night. I wasn't really watching it too closely, but I was kind of on my computer, kind of watching it at the same time. And look, I wasn't paying too close attention, and I was kind of heard what they were talking about on there and looked up, and I was glued to my TV from that moment. I felt it was really scary, and really sucked to see. You don't expect to see something like that, that cardiac arrest. And I mean, thoughts and prayers are with him. And for the three of us being racing fans, it's a familiar feeling that we get from it. And a lot of people who are NFL fans haven't had this feeling before. And I've watched enough racing where it was like, man, you just never know. You gotta kind of, your gut just kind of, your chest just kind of your heart just kind of sinks into your gut, and you just hope that everything ends up okay. And I think some of the reports today have been at least encouraging, that maybe he could end up being okay. I know that his family he's at least that they won't know anything for sure big time, but there's been reports come out. They interviewed his uncle on TV about an hour ago and said that there were some improvements on like his breathing and stuff, or at least they were reducing the oxygen that he was getting. So down to like 50% or something, which was apparently a good sign. So hopefully speedy recovery for him, and hopefully he pulls through. And thoughts and prayers, to him and his family and all the NFL players. There's been a lot of NFL players are really behind him. So it's been good to see the support. But
sports never supersedes human life. And when you've got something going on like that, it becomes about so much more than just the game we like to watch. And football is akin to baseball, but there's no reason a pitcher couldn't take a comebacker off the chest at any point. So, this is something that rings true for sports fans of any type. And I was really, really happy to see the reaction of the Bengals players along with the Bills players. Everybody was very much working together and trying to comfort each other. And I feel really bad for like T. Higgins, who kind of was the one who hit Damar Hamlin in the chest. I watched T at college, and he's a good guy by all indications, and I hope he feels all right and isn't too messed up from that, because that's like a horrible thing to make a normal football play and have somebody get up and collapse. So yeah, and then obviously nobody had ever heard of Damar Hamlin before this last week, man, and looking up stuff about him, this seems like a really good guy, and this just stinks. You don't want to see it. You don't want to see it with anybody, but especially not like a guy like this. And I like you said, Matt, I hope he pulls through and he's able to recover here.
Yeah, and I want to make one more comment on this, and I think it's something that as baseball fans, it's important for us to kind of get out there too. Apparently, what's been, and it doesn't really matter if this is exactly what happened to him or not, but apparently it's something called commotio chorditis or something that happened to him, and it's actually pretty common with baseball. But it's a way you get hit in a certain part of your chest cavity when your heartbeat is at a certain point in its rhythm, that it can cause this. It's extremely rare, but it has happened before, and one of the sports that it does happen more than football, which I can't recall it ever happening in like a football game, but is baseball. Getting hit by a pitch in the chest, and it happens a lot in like little league games and stuff. And I mean, when I say a lot, I mean just compared to like the NFL or something. And it's important for people to know what that is. And if anything good can come out of this, it would be for, like a lot of youth baseball people and stuff to understand what this is and to know how to do CPR and to have, people who to be able to recognize it quick, and because quick response apparently is the biggest way to, help someone pull through this, because it can be fatal. So just the kind of a hope some awareness goes out to, people in the baseball world about this, about this thing happening as well.
Yeah, I think it's just shook the entire sports landscape. Football is the biggest consumer product that the United States offers via, sports programming, and Monday Night Football is one of the most watched, games every single week, and to have that many eyes on a thing like that, Matt, you bring up a good point. It brings a lot of attention to it, and hopefully it brings attention to the fact that people need to learn how to, administrate correct CPR procedures and have defibrillators on hand, because you can do the CPR, but he will still need to be, shocked back into rhythm with the defibrillator and stuff. So hope that Damar Hamlin pulls through. All the signs look to be in the right direction, but it's still such a scary scenario, and it's still a touchy road. So, throughout our next couple episodes, as we get more information, we will throw it on. I know it is a baseball podcast, but it's a big deal in the sports world, and I think everyone deserves to hear about that story. But we will now transition over to the baseball talk. And we'll go ahead and start with I kind of divided it up into divisions this week, just a little different, but probably the biggest move we've had happen since our recording or our last episode was that the Arizona Diamondbacks traded Daulton Varsho to the Toronto Blue Jays for outfielder Lourdes Gurriel, and I believe the number 3 prospect in baseball. You guys can fact check me there. But Gabriel Moreno, a catcher for the Blue Jays. They had depth at the catcher position. They wanted to upgrade their outfield. They got that with Daulton Varsho. But it was a very big trade on that end. So, David, why don't you go ahead and start with this one?
Yeah, so Varsho was a top 50 prospect a couple of years ago. Really solid prospect, but he was a catcher pretty much first and foremost at that point, and all the questions were his glove and whether or not he'd be able to stick behind the plate. Had a lot of power potential, but the big question was going to be the swing and miss. And in his first trip to the big leagues in 2020, he encountered that swing and miss problem. But what he has done in the last couple of years is rebuild his game to be a center fielder that can dabble as a catcher. And I truly don't know if we have a formula, wins above replacement, whatever, to value someone who can play both of those positions at an adequate level. But then on top of that, Varsho's a good defensive center fielder, so his value is kind of difficult to calculate, and I think this shows just how valuable that type of player is, because you can put your backup catcher in center field every other game. Which, and the Blue Jays have a ton of catchers anyway, so Varsho will probably spend most of his time out in the outfield catching. But, Danny Jansen and Alejandro Kirk will be able to, you probably move Kirk to DH and let Jansen be the primary catcher with Varsho kind of moonlighting in. It provides a lot of flexibility for the Blue Jays roster. It gives them a big left-handed power bat in the outfield and in center field especially. And it makes them more athletic. Lourdes Gurriel is a really good player, but he's the kind of guy who hits singles and doubles and then, isn't really a stolen base threat. Varsho stole 16 bases last year. And with the rules changes coming up for more stolen bases probably next year with the pitch clock and the limited pickoffs, I think the more the more athletic you can be, the better. So I think Varsho's maybe a better fit for their roster. And then they're dealing from a position of strength with Gabriel Moreno, who's a really good player in his own right, and obviously a top 10 or 5 prospect at this point. But Moreno, I don't know that he's going to be the same level of hitter as Alejandro Kirk, and I don't know that he's going to be the same level of defender as Danny Jansen. So, the Blue Jays kind of making this trade out of that position of strength to grab a left-handed power bat to fit a lineup that could, go in and win 90-plus games next year. It's a really smart move. If Moreno ends up being a really elite catcher, then, this may not work out for him, but, the Diamondbacks grab their catcher of the future. They deal from a position of strength on their team with tons of left-handed outfielders with Alec Thomas, Corbin Carroll, Jake McCarthy, Dominic Fletcher. They have so many left-handed guys out there. So Varsho was a little bit superfluous. If a couple of those guys pan out, the Diamondbacks are going to be sitting pretty.
Yeah, I think that this trade, it's very risky for the Blue Jays, because I believe that Gabriel Moreno is one of those super high upside type guys as a catcher that could end up being like a top 5 catcher in baseball, potentially. But he's also unproven. He's been a prospect. There's a lot of question marks about his power. He's a very athletic catcher. He's good defensively, and he's got a fantastic hit tool. So, he's one of those things where he's probably going to hit at least above average and defend really well, which for a catcher is remarkable to find that in a guy. And then, and then of course Lourdes Gurriel is, I think he's more of a DH type guy, not a very good defensive outfielder, not completely terrible out there, but he's a slightly above league average hitter probably. And he's probably a below average at in the field, so not a great base runner. He's okay, I guess, but just he's a little bit like Yuli Gurriel in some ways, but doesn't walk a lot, but doesn't strike out too much. But he'll be both of these pieces are going to help the Diamondbacks a lot. I guess that means they're giving up on Kelly as catcher, or at least they probably will be soon. And then Daulton Varsho is he's going to help the Blue Jays. I mean, he's a good player. He had a 4.6 wins above replacement this past year. Great defensively, like David said, center field and catcher. With his he was an above average hitter last year. Hit pretty good power wise. His plate discipline isn't fantastic. He actually runs a pretty low BABIP. I think he just hits the ball in the air a lot, but maybe he has a couple seasons where that improves and he can put up a 115, 120 WRC plus. Very young player still. So definitely an interesting trade, and one that I think both sides really benefited from. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with Gabriel Moreno, though, because there's a world where he ends up being like way, way, way undervalued in this trade, and then there's a world where he ends up being nothing. So it'll be very interesting to see how this trade turns out. And I think both sides did a pretty good job with it.
Yeah, I think it's a really good trade for both sides. I'm a big Daulton Varsho fan. I love that he's out of the division and will stop tormenting the Dodgers every single time we play him. But I think he has another level of some, he showed the power this year. If he can get to walking just a little bit more, the amount of defensive value that he brings to a team. And really, if you look at like his batting averages, they won't show, I think, about as good of a hitter as he really is, which I know it's been a typical thing. Like batting average doesn't show how good he can be.
Right.
But I really love Daulton Varsho as a player. And coming back for the Diamondbacks, it's, you traded from the area of strength from the outfield / I guess some catching depth there, but you got, a top catching prospect in baseball who is really good defensively, who can be one of the, if he reaches his potential, like Matt said, he can be one of the top catchers in baseball. And you have him under control for a long time where you aren't sure what you're getting out of Carson Kelly. He showed his flashes. He was really good in, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
That he was really good. And this year,
bad.
Bad. It was really bad this year. And honestly, part of that was he had a horrendous start, and he actually was pretty decent in the second half. But there's some gap there, and he's only club controlled for, I think, 2 more seasons, or maybe it's 3 more. I think it's 2 more seasons. So, if Kelly isn't it, you just got your catcher of the future, Gabriel Moreno, for the next how many ever years. And I think Gurriel might help fit this team better right now anyways.
Yep.
He doesn't have to play the field. Like Matt mentioned, he's more of a DH at this point. He also had a really weird 2022. Like his power numbers dropped significantly. Like he was a 20 homer guy in 2019. In 2020, 11 homers, which is in the shortened season. If you, prorate that for the rest of the season, you're talking about close to a 30 homer guy. And then 21 homers in 2021. 2022 had 5. And if you look at his Baseball Savant page, his barrel rate went down in 2022, but his hard hit rate and his exit velocity went up. So it's really, really weird. I think that power is still in there, and maybe just a little going to a different team will help him unlock, that little extra bit. And he is, I think he's controlled for 2 more years.
Yeah.
Yep.
So no, he's a free agent.
No, he's a free agent after next year.
He's a free agent after this year.
1 year.
It's a 1-year deal for the Diamondbacks where if it doesn't work, you're off of it, and you basically traded Varsho for Gabriel Moreno at that point, which is a top prospect who's young and you're club controlled for a lot longer. Anyways.
One quick thing about Lourdes Gurriel, that his power surge did correspond with the juice ball.
It did, yes.
So that could have been part of the reason, but you did see this year. I mean, he hit 291, 343, 400. I mean, he was not at all a not strong hitter. He was really good. Anchored a Blue Jays lineup that was really strong all season. So.
Yeah, and one thing to add to what Damian was saying about his home run totals in his career, 2018 through 2021, his lowest home run per fly ball percentage in his career was 15.3%. So 15% of his fly balls were home runs. And in 2022, it was 4%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it just kind of goes to show you how much that dropped. And I know it dropped around the league, but that's also a kind of an unsustainable drop, especially with the fact that his hard hit rate didn't really change that much.
No, his launch angle.
I mean, right. I mean, nothing really changed that much, except I guess he was just got a little bit of bad luck. Was probably part of it. So
it was literally just the barrel rate. I mean, his barrel rate dropped from 61st percentile to 12th percentile. But his hard hit rate went up about 15 percentile, and his average exit velocity went up about 21.
Yep.
Like he was hitting the ball as hard. Just wasn't barreling.
He might have been hitting a lot of high pop-ups or high fly balls or something. Like I don't know. It's weird because his launch angle was also about the same, and his it's not like he was hitting like way fewer fly balls, and that's what did his barrel rate in or something. Yeah. It's just weird, but
I think it's very correctable change for him to at least get back to a 15 to 20 homerish guy easily,
for sure.
But let's go ahead and stay in the American League East, and we'll jump over to the Boston Red Sox, which we actually didn't put the newest thing on here, but that's that the avoided arbitration with Rafael Devers today was one of the news, which there's been a lot of talks about the big extension, could still happen, could make him easier to trade. It's interesting, at least, that I think it was like 17.5 they agreed to today. So that's still going to be a story that we're tracking through the trade deadline. But the move we actually did have was that they ended up signing Corey Kluber to a 1-year, $10 million deal. Has an option for 2024 with for $11 million with bonuses for games started that go up from 20, 25, and 30 games started.
Yeah, I can start here with Kluber. I've been really disappointed in the Red Sox offseason, but I do think this was a pretty good signing. Kluber was pretty good in 2022 for Tampa. Had a 4.34 ERA is not great, but he had a 3.57 FIP and a 3.92 xFIP. He refused to walk anybody, which was a good sign because when he was with New York in 2021, when he only pitched 80 innings, he walked almost 4 guys per 9 innings, which is way, way, way above what he typically has in his career. But his walks were back down in 2022. He also was healthy for the most part as he started 31 games and threw 164 innings, which has been the problem really since 2018, which was his last great season with Cleveland. Like, he has not stayed healthy at all since then. Pitched only 35 innings 2019, 1 inning in 2020, and then in 2021 with the Yankees he pitched 80 innings, and so he finally was able to stay relatively healthy. 31 starts. This is a guy, his fastball velocity is now below 90 miles per hour. So this isn't a guy who's anymore going to just blow you away. And even though he's never really been that type of guy, his peak was like a 93 to 94 mile per hour fastball velocity, but he's definitely more of a soft tosser, crafty type pitcher now. But for a number 4 probably in a rotation for the Red Sox who really need pitching depth, $10 million has kind of been the going rate for those. In fact, it might be a little cheaper than some guys who have similar resumes to Kluber, and you also get a club option on him. So if he does well this year, then you can bring him back for next year, which is really nice to have. So I think this is a pretty good signing for them. I like it.
Here's an interesting thought, and I don't have much on the signing. It's a good signing. I would much rather have Corey Kluber for 1 year and an option than Matt Boyd, who went for the same price.
Yep.
So this
Clevenger for $2 million more.
Clevenger for 2 more. Yeah, this is a good deal for the Red Sox, who seemingly have gone bargain bin shopping, except for the one guy they signed from overseas that they overpaid for. This offseason's been weird for them. They let Xander Bogaerts walk. I like the Devers move. I think it gives them cost certainty if they do want to trade him. I doubt a trade happens before the season starts, but if the Red Sox are out of it by July, I think Devers moves. We'll keep tabs on that as we go. Here's my question though: is Corey Kluber a Hall of Famer if he has 2 more good years, let's say with the Red Sox, and then somebody else next year, or even if this deal goes through?
I think yes.
No,
it's close. I think it's close. He's going to be on the ballot for a while. And he'll have some arguments for the 2 Cy Youngs, obviously, but
he'll make it past his first year on the ballot. But I mean, his career counting stats aren't even close. I mean, 39 WAR. He's got a 3.30
I'm saying
ERA.
two more good years. Let's say he does what he did last year 2 more times, gets to like 45 WAR. Then you're talking he's right on the border. That's why I wonder. 2 Cy Youngs, a lot of playoff success. Started a Game 7 in the World Series that he lost.
I don't think he makes it, but
I think the 5 years of dominance that he had from 2014 through 2018, and we're saying the he'll be close on the WAR, but that's considering that he threw 35 innings in 2019, 1 inning in 2020, and then only 80 innings in 2021.
Eventually we'll have to start considering 2020 in the WAR totals as well. That did cut out of it.
He wouldn't have pitched anyways because he was injured.
Yeah, he got injured in that first inning.
He only pitched 1 inning. It was he had it was an injury that would have taken him out for the full 160. Yeah,
it was the lat strain or whatever it was.
It would have taken him out a lot.
I just think that it's a very good question, and David, you brought it up that way, but I think the one way. There's the counting stats, there's the WAR, and then one way that I like to look at things was a player dominant in a certain time where he was the best at his position for a certain time? And I can say that Corey Kluber was probably the best starting pitcher one of those years or a few of those years in that 5-year run. Like, you wouldn't have wanted to face him throughout that little bit of time, and he brought the, Indians at the time, Guardians now, to he was leading some of that playoff success they had there. Like, I think that 5-year run of dominance outweighs the a little extra, the couple years where he missed due to the injury problems, and it's going to hurt his counting stats.
In 2016, in the playoffs, he had a 1.83 ERA in 34 starts, won 4 games, lost 1. Yeah, I mean, for all the talk we have about like guys like David Ortiz and some of those guys who got a little extra juice off their playoff success, Corey Kluber's 2016 run, the Indians do not get to the World Series without him, and they do not get to Game 7 without him. He was the most dominant pitcher, and they ran him out there on 3 days rest in Game 7, and he still only allowed, I think, 3 runs. So,
yeah, I just to comment one more. I mean, I think that most people believe that the guy who is a Hall of Famer based off of being great in the postseason as a pitcher is probably Jack Morris, right? I mean,
well,
because
Jack Morris shouldn't be a Hall of Famer anyway.
Right, but he shouldn't be a Hall of Famer. But the reason that they put him in was because he was great in the postseason.
And he had counting stats.
And
right?
he had counting stats. He had 56 WAR.
Right. But that's the thing about Jack Morris was he pitched forever. The guy was like 40 when he retired.
I mean, but longevity is part of the Hall of Fame. I mean,
so is dominance, though.
Did Jack Morris ever have a 6-year run or 5-year run?
Sandy Koufax put up like 65 WAR in his run, though. Like,
yeah, but he was, he only pitched for 10 years.
Well, that's what I'm just saying. He's the exception. I mean, he put up 55 WAR in 10 years. I mean, like, he's the exception to the rule. I mean,
it's an interesting I think Roy Halladay was kind of in the same ballpark. I think he got to 50, but
65.
No, never mind. Just kidding. Yeah. Roy was really good, but
get wrecked.
He reminds me of Roy Halladay. Kluber does. I just don't think he did it for as long as Roy Halladay. Right. So,
but being able to do it for a long time is part of the equation. I mean, it's just. I mean, I love Corey Kluber. He was one of my favorite pitchers when he was at his peak. But it's just one of those things like you need to do what he did for 10 years instead of 5 years. I mean, I'm not trying to be a hater or something, but
here's a good comp that we could throw out there, and it's really, really close. With a couple years of dominance that way and around the same WAR as what David was kind of hoping there, Cliff Lee. Cliff Lee got to 48.2 WAR. He had some couple dominant years in there that were on the level of Kluber. Is Cliff Lee a Hall of Famer?
No.
Are we about to have the Cliff Lee ballot, or did we already? I think we already did, and I think he got 5%
already fell off.
Yeah. So then no,
so
but Cliff Lee also didn't win 2 Cy Youngs.
That is true.
And he also pitched in a rotation that he kind of got hidden in. Right, he was pitching in a rotation with Halladay, Oswalt, Hamels in the 2008 run.
Cliff Lee, though, like, when you compare a 5-year run, like the Cy Young thing, it just matters what everyone else did. Like Cliff Lee put up 7.3 WAR and 7.1 WAR in a 2-year span. I mean, that's very similar to like Corey Kluber's peak years. It just happens that the voters didn't give it to Cliff Lee. Like,
oh, 100%. I think that, but you've also got Johan Santana from that time frame as well, who didn't make it into the Hall of Fame, who should have. And if you have a Johan Santana in, maybe you look more closely at Cliff Lee. And if you look more closely at Cliff Lee, maybe you look more closely at Corey Kluber. So,
old Hall of Fame talk that we will probably hit on in a couple weeks anyways.
Yes.
But it was a very good question. It did give a good back and forth there. But let's go ahead and jump over to a smaller move in the American League East. And it was that James McCann got traded to the Baltimore Orioles along with cash for a player to be named later. And I know, Matt, you had some of the details on that.
Yeah, I believe the Orioles are only going to pay $5 million over the 2 years, so the Mets are paying the rest of that, which makes sense because I remember in 2021 we did this podcast, and I told you how much I thought that was a terrible contract that the Mets signed with James McCann, and well, it turns out it was horrible, and he's not very good.
That you did.
So, he put up very pedestrian numbers with New York. He's still a decent defensive catcher. Very pedestrian numbers offensively. Put up 59 WRC plus in 2022. And, obviously the Mets don't care about money, so that bad contract doesn't hurt them that much. And they paid most of it for him to go to the Orioles, where he'll back up Adley Rutschman. And that's the role that James McCann should be in. He's a good backup catcher. Like, he can come in. He's not going to be a disaster behind the plate defensively. And every now and then you might get a hot stretch where his BABIP is higher and he puts up, slightly below league average offensive numbers. But he's just not a great everyday option. And I think that the Orioles are glad to get a backup catcher that's got a lot of experience for very cheap, and the Mets are glad to have that spot open for. I guess they signed Omar Narvaez and potentially Francisco Alvarez as well. So I guess this kind of makes sense on both sides.
Yeah, it's a backup deal for a catcher, like you mentioned, gets the money off the Mets books for a move that might or might not happen, which we'll hit on in a little bit. But let's go ahead and move over to the American League West now. The smallest of the moves was Oakland signing Drew Rucinski. Is that right? Rucinski to a 1-year, $3 million deal. Has a club option for $5 million for 2024.
So Drew Rucinski, I looked it up, has pitched in the KBO the last 4 years. He has made 30 starts, 30 starts, 30 starts, and 31 starts. And he's had a 3.05 ERA twice, a 3.17 ERA, and a 2.97 ERA. This after him having a 5.33 ERA in the majors from 2014 to 2017. This is a perfect A's move. They'll flip him at the deadline if he's any good. His last, several years have been good, but now he's 34. Does his stuff translate in the majors? We'll find out, but, the A's can't. They got to run somebody out there to pitch, so might as well be Drew Rucinski.
And it's not for a lot of monies, which they like to do.
Yep.
Let's go ahead and stay in that division, though, with the Los Angeles Angels signing Brandon Drury to a 2-year, $17 million deal.
Yeah, Brandon Drury had a really, really good 2022. He almost didn't even have a spot to play last year. I think he contemplated retiring just because he was, probably going to end up in the minor leagues. But the Reds gave him a shot, and he ended up doing really well. He hit 263 with a 320 on base, 492 slugging, hit 28 home runs. That's a 123 WRC plus. Put up 3 wins above replacement. It was fantastic. I believe he was an all-star, correct?
He was.
He was an all-star for the Reds.
Mm-hmm.
Got traded at the deadline to San Diego, where I don't think he was quite as good with San Diego. He definitely wasn't, but he still was okay, above average at the plate. This is a guy who can play a few different positions, can play corner outfield, third base. He's good insurance in Los Angeles with the Angels for if Anthony Rendon goes down against. He's dealt with those health issues. He can play second base as well. A good utility guy to have around, pretty good hitter, add some depth in that lineup. I like the signing for them. They didn't break the bank for a guy who maybe has, I don't think he'll put up a 123 WRC plus again, but chances are he probably puts up a 110 WRC plus and puts up, 2 WAR maybe. And if he does that, then you've got a pretty good contract signing him to. I believe he's only getting paid like $8.5 million a year, so on AAV. So I mean that's a pretty solid contract for the Angels, and I kind of like the move. I think he'll help them.
Yeah, Drury's a really nice success story. Did not have any success after being kind of a top prospect with the Blue Jays, I believe, way back in the day. He bounced around. He's been a bit of a journeyman. Oh, it was the Diamondbacks, sorry. He really fell off after I think it was his second season with the Diamondbacks. But then, with the Blue Jays, he kind of wasn't good. And then he went to the Mets and again, didn't really have it and found his footing with the Reds this season and was traded to the Padres and assisted in their playoff run and in their playoff success. I'm excited that players having a good season results in something like a 2-year, $17 million deal. I think teams were not going to be willing to give off a deal like this for a player that has been not as good as he was this past season for his entire career. But it seems like, with teams spending a little bit more this offseason, this deal is something that could have been done. And I think that Drury's a really perfect example of play a lot of positions, don't play any of them well, and still have defensive value that way because he can play third, second, first. He's moonlighted at short. He's moonlighted in the outfield. That kind of versatility on your bench is just awesome. And so, Mike Trout's going to have a little bit of help. Ohtani's going to have a little bit of help this year. And that Angels offense, I saw a tweet about it after this signing, was that the entire projected lineup will have an above average WRC plus by current projections, presuming Rendon starts, but that's still a big step up from the past couple of seasons. So I think the Angels have made some good moves this offseason with Hunter Renfroe and Brandon Drury.
Sounds like David's getting roped into the old Damien tactic of the Angels.
I am not picking the Angels for anything.
No,
let's be very clear.
Well, you mentioned that he could play a utility role there. It kind of fits like a Chris Taylor, what he does with the Dodgers. And I know it's because I'm a Dodger fan that I give that comparison, but he's a guy who plays second, plays third, plays, some outfield there. Obviously Drury can't play center field and probably not as good of a defender as Taylor, but gives you options at least. And they've kind of broadened their aspect there this year with trading for Gio Urshela, who could play second, short, third. You have Fletcher, who could play second, short, third. You've got Drury now, who could play second, third. If you need to in a pinch, can play third. He could play first as well, probably some left field. Like, it's just giving them a bunch of options here where they're able to move a lot of people around and give them depth for injuries that they really haven't had the past couple of years. I mean, Jack Mayfield in one season had like the majority of the at-bats at third base, I believe, or something like that. It's just, you can't have that when you're the Angels and you're trying to compete and you're going for this one last kind of hurrah, before you get the new ownership. And if you're going to sign Ohtani or not, which is going to be an interesting story the entire year. But let's go ahead and we're going to stay in the division, but we'll go over to the team that has spent the most money the past couple years, and that's with the Texas Rangers. They ended up signing Nathan Eovaldi to a 2-year, $34 million deal. This deal is really interesting. There's a vesting third-year option. He has bonuses in there for if he hits $160 million. Has an extra player option if he can reach 300 innings pitched between this season and next season. That could take the full-on total max of the deal to a 3-year, $63 million deal overall.
Yeah, I like the signing a lot for the Rangers. Eovaldi in 2022 it dealt with some injury issues, only pitched 109 innings, but he was still pretty good. 3.87 ERA. His FIP was inflated, but he actually ran a 17% home run per fly ball rate, which is astronomically high and pretty unsustainable. But in 2021, he was one of the best pitchers in the American League, with putting up almost 6 wins above replacement, 182 innings. So I think that this is a guy who, adds more depth to that rotation. As we've talked about a lot, they needed help in that rotation, and they added more. Eovaldi, 2 years, $34 million is not too bad. If he stays healthy, obviously that becomes a third year, which since health has been a little bit of an issue for him, you've got, you can that's kind of what they would like him 3 years if he can stay healthy. So it makes sense on both ends there. And then, I think when you look at the market, Charlie Morton's getting $20 million with an option. And you've got some other guys that are in that kind of, I feel like Nate Eovaldi's kind of in that range of pitcher. So 2 years, $34 million is not too bad for him. And I think it's a pretty good signing there. And they're starting to get a pretty solid rotation in Texas, and it's interesting.
So you comped him to Charlie Morton. I was unaware of this, and I know you were unaware of this because you just mentioned him in the same sense as Charlie Morton, who's 38 years old. Eovaldi's 33.
Yeah.
He's a 2-year deal was kind of surprising, especially because he's coming attached with a qualifying offer. I would not have been surprised to see him beat Jameson Talon's deal with the Cubs. Like I was thinking 4 years, 70 something. I really thought this deal would be a lot bigger because it's a lot more cost to give up that draft pick to sign Nathan Eovaldi here. And ultimately, I figured he would just go back to the Red Sox on another 1-year deal or something. But Yeah, this is kind of weird for me because Eovaldi's a lot better than this contract, I think.
So it's interesting you say that because I just went for shits and giggles looking in our free agency predictor. You had him for 3 years, 45. I had him for 3 years, 45. Matt had him at 4 for 65.
Oh, well, never mind.
Pretty interesting right there.
Yeah, good job, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I really like Eovaldi as a pitcher. I think that probably the injury issue is probably what limited his deal. I think that he's only made he's made one season since 2014 where he put up over 30 starts. I mean, he put up, other than that, his highest total is 24 start or 27 starts in 2015. Since then, 21, 12, 9 being in the shortened season, and then 20 in 2022. So he's really only had one season where he was fully healthy all year and put up over 30 starts since he was with the Marlins. And I think that's something to kind of think about, just probably what limited him. And that's why I kind of comp him to Charlie Morton, because while Eovaldi's a lot lower, a lot younger, I think that the production is similar. And I think that the age of Charlie Morton kind of coincides with the injury risk of Eovaldi. Like, I think it kind of lines up together. So I think I had to kind of put him in that same category. But I know about what I had said a while back about his contract being higher, and he got a lot more. I think he got pretty good bit more money and just average annual value from this than 4 years, 65. So I guess it makes a little bit of sense that way. But yeah, I think I like the deal. I mean, I think we all kind of do, right?
Yeah, I think it's a really solid deal. And you mentioned it. I just want to hit on this one little nugget before we move on. You mentioned the Rangers rotation now. Now looking at what this rotation can look like, it's going to be Jacob deGrom, Martin Perez, John Gray, Eovaldi, and then some version of Andrew Heaney, Jake Odorizzi, Dane Dunning, and Spencer Howard, I guess, is the other guy they will use. I mean, they have Cole. They have Cole Winn as well. I'm talking about options there. They have a lot of depth now there, which is something the Rangers haven't had when they were starting Mike Foltynewicz, a couple years ago for a majority of the season. So, And they've done there's still work to be done in this division, but they've made it a lot interesting now. A lot more interesting. That fight for that third place in this division is going to be really, really interesting between the Angels and the Rangers at the moment. Because I think the other two have really separated themselves. But let's go ahead and move over to the National League now. We'll start in the National League East with the Washington Nationals signing Dominic Smith to a 1-year, $2 million deal with the $2 million more in potential bonuses.
That's a deal that happened.
It happened.
Yep. Dom Smith is an extreme reclamation project, and the Nats are going to try to flip him at the deadline. He's been really bad the last couple of years, but he was really good in the 2020 season, and I'm so glad the Cubs did not sign him. That's it.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, signed it for nothing, so you might as well. But
yeah,
they signed a different guy for nothing. It's fine.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and we'll jump to the New York Mets, which they made their big signing. The big
finally.
They signed Danny Mendick to a 1-year, $1 million deal, and they end up getting 4 years of club control with that.
Yeah, Danny Mendick was not too bad in 2022 in 106 plate appearances. He actually put up a 125 WRC plus with a 343 on base, 443 slugging. Pretty interesting. He did run a really high batting average on balls in play. Pretty, not awful defender. Played pretty good at a shortstop. Play middle infield. So we add some middle infield depth. It's not a bad option. So.
Yeah, and the deal we were kind of hinting on a little bit earlier is we mentioned the Correa had a deal with Giants that fell through with the physical. The next night or that night, whatever, he agreed to a deal with the Mets, and that was before Christmas, and it's still not official because they also have concerns about his, I guess it's this right ankle / fibula area. Anyway, he agreed to some 12-year deal. We'll see. We're not going to report anything on until it actually is official because who the hell knows. But it is pretty funny at this moment. So we'll stay there and we'll jump over to the Atlanta Braves. and they ended up extending Sean Murphy to a 6-year, $73 million option, or $73 million deal with an option that could take it up to 7 for 88. And Matt, you called it.
Yeah.
Matt, don't, Matt, hold on one sec. Before you go, I hate the Oakland Athletics. Okay, go ahead.
So I was scrolling through Twitter last week and I saw a press release and I knew what it was, because every time the Braves do something, it starts with nobody reports it, unless it's a deal that's like a trade where something leaks from the other team's side or something. Nobody reports it, nobody says anything, and it just says press release. The Braves have done, and every time it's the same format and it's the same thing. It's a Braves signing a young position player to a very good deal, team friendly typically, and they always donate 1% to the Atlanta Braves Foundation. That's always in the press release as well. But anyways, Sean Murphy, we talked about him a lot with the trade. So talking about what he what he is as a player is probably probably a little overkill since we've already talked about it a lot. But 6 years, $73 million is an absolute steal. You're signing him out of, I believe, 4 years of his free agency, which probably would have ended up being like actually 5 years, because you've got a team option with no buyout. So you really signed him to 5 years of his free agency by buying out a couple of years of arbitration. And I mean, this deal is just unbelievably cheap. I mean, the most money he's going to make in 1 year is $15 million, and this is a guy who put up 5 WAR this year, and he's one of the best catchers in baseball. So I think that, I don't think there's any other way you can put it than I can't believe they did this again. So.
First of all, can we talk about how impressive it is that the Braves continually nothing leaks and it's all just the press releases?
It's amazing.
Like, it's hilarious at this point that everything they do is literally just press released by their own social media pages, which is very, very, very impressive. But now looking at the Sean Murphy deal overall, the main thing that the Atlanta Braves have always done with, locking up the young players, and it makes it look a lot more, impressive of a deal, is that they always say, hey, you're going to get this arbitration money anyways, but instead of us fighting through it every single year, why don't we either just work out a deal where some years you save yourself a little bit of money and some years we save ourselves a little bit of money? Like, instead of just bouncing back and forth. Like, I think through arbitration, he was projected to get about $3 million this year, or 3.5, and he signed for $4 million now.
Yeah.
And then next year he'd probably be projected for right around 8 million or so. Cause that's a 50% jump, and he got 9 million. And then it jumps into where he was supposed to be starting to get the 12-ish million. He's getting 15. But it makes the AAV of the deal, and on the luxury tax purposes, it looks like a $12.1 million deal, which looks very, very impressive when he's pretty much getting the money he's going to get anyways. But you just add on the arbitration years overall, so it lowers the AAV down, which is big brain. It's phenomenal that they find a way to do this every single year. And I don't hate the overall contract. Obviously don't hate it, but I don't think it's that much less. He took a discount, don't get me wrong. He took a discount to sign the long-term deal at this moment. But what he signed technically would be 5 at, what would it be if you count just the 2 years after that? He's getting 15 a year, so 5 at 60. Is that right?
Yeah, that's way less than Wilson Contreras got.
Right.
Like that is a super team friendly free agent.
He got 5 at 97.
He could have broken 100 million.
Oh yeah,
I don't know how the Braves do it.
Yeah, it's especially what a contract's going to look like in 2 years. When he would, or 3 years, whenever he would have been a free agent.
The one thing I'll add is that when the Braves are doing this, especially with a lot of these guys, there's been a couple of them, like Austin Riley's deal that's not super team friendly. That's a $212 million deal. Like,
watch what Devers gets. It'll be team friendly. Watch what Devers gets.
But it might end up being team friendly. But I'm just saying, like, the Braves aren't if he was on the free agent market, Riley would probably make more than that. But it's not. What the Braves do is they're signing these guys to locking them up and making them generationally wealthy. When there's a lot of risk involved in their careers, because like with Austin Riley, he was making like league minimum. He wasn't even into ARB yet. I mean, he could get hurt tomorrow and never play again and make nothing. Now he's guaranteed $212 million, even though he might be taking a discount at some point. And Sean Murphy is to a less level than that, but he's guaranteed all this money. He could get hurt tomorrow. He's a catcher. I mean, anything can happen with a catcher. So he's guaranteeing himself the ability to, instead of making, $4 million in his career, to make $73 million, whereas he could probably get more later on. It's one of those things where he's going to be, and I mean, I'm not saying that it's not team friendly and it's a good decision or whatever. I'm just saying, like, it takes a lot of risk out for the player, and some players like to take that risk out. So, it's hard to turn down that much money, even if you do think you can make double that at some point. It's hard to turn down $75 million, or $88 million or whatever. Like,
I just want to know how the Braves keep getting him to sign him. Like, do they lock him in a room and say, we're not letting you out till you sign this ultra team friendly contract? Man, it's been so many of them at this point. Like, it's crazy. And also, the Braves farm system is now the worst farm system in baseball. But they don't need any farm players. They don't need trade and sign good players, folks. Trade and sign for good players.
And honestly, what the Braves should do is anytime they get a high minors position player that is close to looking like major league ready, they need to trade them for multiple low minors, high upside guys, because when these contracts are all going to be in quick succession. They come up like 2028, 2029. And if you get a bunch of, 17, 18-year-olds now at, in the low minors, they'll be ready about then. So if I were the Braves, I would start to kind of make some of those moves. And that's kind of what they did with the Drew Waters thing, like this summer, where they got the draft pick. That's kind of the type of things I think they're going to start doing more of. But definitely an interesting extension. And I'm as a Braves fan, I'm excited that Sean Murphy's going to be around for a while, because I think he's really, really good. And this is a great move for them. So
I am shocked that Matt is excited that the Braves got a good player. I don't know about you, David.
When you're just raining good players around you, at least Matt's not like jaded by it yet.
Yep.
At least they didn't sign Tucker Barnhart.
Yeah, you go.
You said good players. Players.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Come on, don't be hard on Tucker Barnhart.
I'm about to be hard on Tucker Barnhart.
We'll get to that one in a minute. We start flying through. We're already 52 minutes in. They acquired Lucas Luetge as well from the Yankees, a left-handed reliever. It's been pretty solid the last couple of years. I believe he's like 35. Yeah. It's just another depth option for that bullpen that they're just going to be nasty.
Yeah, I think he's going to be kind of the guy that replaces the Tyler Matzik role from this past year, not year before last, but this past year, Tyler Matzik was kind of like the third lefty in the bullpen. That's what Luke will be. And I will say that Indigo Diaz, one of the guys they gave up, has at times been dominant in the minors. So it's possible that he ends up having a really good career at some point with the Yankees. But I think that this made sense on both ends.
It did, because he got DFA'd, I believe.
He did.
So somebody was going to have to pick him up, because he was been pretty effective the last couple of years. But we'll go over to the next team in the. I think this is the only division that every team made a move.
Yep,
which is pretty impressive. The Miami Marlins signed Gene Segura to a 2-year, $17 million deal. There is a third-year club option for $10 million on that.
Yeah, Gene Segura is pretty good. I mean, he's going to play probably second or third.
Third.
Yeah, third base for the Marlins, which is, I think that doesn't really fit the offensive profile, but the Marlins they're a very difficult free agent destination right now. They don't really have a direction. They've got a lot of young power hitting guys that don't hit for average, and they really needed some batting average in that offense to counter it out. They got like JJ Bleday and Peyton Burdick and some of those guys. It's a lineup with a lot of upside, but a lot of strikeout swing and miss problems. They're not going to win anything this year, but they do need to, hope to move forward. And I think Gene Segura can kind of point them in the right direction a little bit.
Yeah, Gene Segura is like the perfect good player. Like, he's not going to be a lead or anything, but I mean, he put up 3.4 WAR in 2021, and this year in only 98 games because of injury, he put up 1.7. So he's going to put up 2 to 3 WAR. He's a perfectly good everyday regular who has pretty good contact rates and plays good defense. So good for them.
He might even steal more bases this year.
He
too,
will.
With the rule
He
changes.
will. Yep.
Yeah. And it's not, it's good clubhouse presence to put there with those younger guys as well. But the jumping over to the Philadelphia Phillies, the last team in this division, they signed closer Craig Kimbrell to a 1-year, $10 million deal.
Yeah. I was gonna say this was a really this is way more money than Kimbrell should be getting, but that's been happening with relievers all off season. So
if Kimbrell has good skill, but his fastball velocity is declining, and they're going to need to figure something out to change what Kimbrell's doing. I think they can. Kimbrell's got a lot of talent. That curveball still has a super high spin rate, but he's going to have to set it up better off of a fastball that is no longer blow it by hitters fast. So we'll see what they do. The Phillies are not known for being good about their tweaking of players especially when it comes to pitching. They mostly, we see guys fall off with the Phillies and go somewhere else and rebound. So in theory, this is a scary move, but it's still Craig Kimbrell. He could come out and be dominant again. You never know.
Yeah, and he showed flashes of that last year. June, he had a 2.70 ERA, August, a 3.72, and then September and October, he had a 2.51. Was left off the postseason roster. But one interesting thing is later in the season, I don't know if he's actually going to bring it in or he's going to keep developing it. He was tweaking with a third, like a slider-ish pitch.
That could be the type of thing that he needs to unlock.
Yeah, he was tweaking with a third, like that sliderish pitch to kind of break off the fastball curveball because it can be kind of predictable. I don't know how much he ever brought it into the game scenario, but if he keeps developing that, could help him.
Yeah, one other thing, Kimbrell, he needs to throw strikes too. I mean, that's the thing. Like, he's got such a violent delivery, it gets wild, and when you're not throwing super hard, that can be rough.
I've watched Kimbrell throw strikes though, and he throws them right down the middle.
Oh, I know.
And if it's not the 97 and 99 it was a couple years ago, then it's a home run. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, I saw the flashes of that this year too. I mean, it's just finding that one thing that locks him back in. I think he's been on all three of our teams now. That's pretty fun.
Yep. Yes.
Let's go over to the NL Central, and I think we can start throwing a party, everybody, because the Cincinnati Reds signed somebody.
Yay.
It was Will Myers, so it's not that big of a yay. But they signed Will Myers to a 1-year, $7.5 million deal. One interesting clause, I had not actually seen much of this in the deals this way. Like, we've seen little, like, if he gets a $1 million trade assignment, he has a $2 million trade assignment if he's traded at all in 2023, and also has a 2024 mutual option on that deal as well. And to make this move official, they also DFA'd Mike Moustakas.
Yeah, Will Myers, I mean, he's kind of in that everyday player mold. He's a okay first baseman, DH type guy. Maybe can play a little bit of outfield still, but I mean, I know he played 36 games in the outfield this past year, but he's not great out there. He probably should play first base. Votto maybe DH a little bit more this year and put Will Myers at first. But I mean, he's still a above average hitter. He's all right. For $7 million, it works. He might be able to get a good year out of him and send him away at the deadline and get something interesting back for him. So good veteran presence. He's been around a long time. It's totally fine for the Reds.
Here's the thing about Will Myers is that I always wondered if there was a little bit more, if maybe somebody could convince him to wear batting gloves.
Yeah, I thought Will Myers was going to be way better than he actually ended up being. But I mean, he showed flashes. I mean, he's been an above average league, or Jesus, can I spoke? He's been a above average hitter by WRC plus every single season of his career outside of 2019, where he had a 97.
In 2020, he had a 155 WRC plus, and that was the shortened season, obviously, but he really put it all together. That's in there. I don't know if it's going to be in there for the Reds, but you never know.
Who knows? You go to Citizens Bank Ballpark and Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it just
It's not Citizens Bank. What am I talking about?
Great American.
Ballpark.
Great American Ballpark.
There you
Same
go.
difference. Same difference.
Whatever. It didn't used to be a C. Did it used to have a C name?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
But I want to mention just real quick, Mike Moustakas, that was a terrible contract, 4 years, $64 million, and he's put up negative .5 WAR over that time. It's been rough. He's been injured a lot. I bet somebody puts a minor league deal on him, but that's been a rough deal.
He also can't moonlight at second base anymore with the lack of the shift.
Yep.
It's absolutely going to be the Dodgers. I could already see it. All right, so let's jump to the Chicago Cubs. David, you signed Tucker Barnhart.
We did, yeah. I didn't do that. I would not have done that.
Yeah, I mean, kind of get associated with it. But Tucker Barnhart signed a 2-year, $6.5 million deal. Can reach up to 9.5. Does have a second-year player option, and then I'll get it out of the way so you could just go ahead and talk about it as well. Drew Smyly signed a 2-year, $19 million deal, has a $10 million option for 2025. That comes along with a $2.5 million buyout.
Now, Damien's trying to get at me because I do not like the Tucker Barnhart deal, but let me just remind you, Damien, Cody Bellinger is a Cub.
I would never get at you for
Cody
that.
Bellinger. Anyway, Drew Smyly's a really good deal here. He was good for the Cubs last year, and you have Jason Hayward now. I don't have him anymore.
I know that was the point.
I traded him for Dansby Swanson.
So Drew Smyly. You did. Drew Smyly was really good last year. Oh my God.
Sorry.
The 2015 offseason for the Dodgers. Anyway, so Drew Smyly was good last year. I did not like that signing because I've really been frustrated with Drew Smyly before.
I remember that.
And he came out and he wasn't very good, and then he went on the IL, came back and was really good. And down the stretch, the Cubs were, I think, above 500 in the second half of last year. So the big reason that was Drew Smyly's pitching. He'll be in the rotation. He's a 4-5, and for less than $10 million. I mean, again, I would rather have this than a Matt Boyd at 10 or a Mike Clevenger at 12. We kind of keep going to those contracts, but it's because the value is coming out of these other contracts. And this one is a 2-year deal as well. It's clearly the Cubs have a really good relationship with Drew Smyly. They wanted him back from the very start of the offseason. The rumor was they were going to try to re-sign him. And he fits into this need for pitching depth for the Cubs. He'll bridge the gap to Hayden Wesneski and Jordan Wicks and some of those other top prospects that are coming up for the Cubs that can slot into the rotation and take over for him if he gets injured. The risk is super low, and you're bringing back a guy who was really good for the team last year. So no issues with that one. Tucker Barnhart, the Cubs were looking for a backup catcher, or a defense-first backup catcher, that is. My biggest issue with this is that Tucker Barnhart hasn't been a good defensive catcher in a couple of years, and that's where I'm like, I don't see the upside here. I don't see the logic. He's got a reputation as a good defensive catcher because he won the Gold Glove in like 2017, but he hasn't been good in a while, and I just don't see it panning out and coming back. Now, everybody was bad in Detroit last year. Maybe he rebounds. He seems to really be excited about being a Cub. He's got the player option to, I can see it working out and making me wrong. I can, but I really don't think I am. I think he'll be gone by June. I don't think he'll be able to do anything, and he'll be kind of bad metrically, and hopefully Miguel Amaya is just ready and they can just get rid of him.
Yeah. I want to mention on Drew Smyly because he was a Brave in 2021. I watched him a lot. The guy in 2021 was a home run launching pad.
Yeah.
And last year...
Wasn't last year.
I was going to say last year his home run per fly ball rate went down a lot. And I think it was just really high with Atlanta compared to his career averages. In Atlanta, he had an 18% home run per fly ball rate, which is just really, really high. And back in Chicago, it was kind of a normal-ish, like 12% home run per fly ball rate. I think that had a lot to do with it. He's not going to put up a 3.47 ERA again, though. He was more of like a low fours ERA type pitcher, and I think that's what they signed him to be. I mean, number 4, number 5 started, like David said, he'll have a little above 4 ERA, below 4.5 probably. solid veteran piece. I think it's fine. I probably would have preferred Kluber, who signed a really similar contract, but Drew Smiley is totally fine, especially with the fact that he was already in house there and has had success there. And then you also talk about Tucker Barnhart. I mean, it's $3 million, and it's not going to hurt you if he's bad, and he's got defensive upside, I guess. 2021, he was not bad defensively. He wasn't like elite, but he was good. Put up over a 1 WAR in 2021 as well as a catcher. He's not. 2022 Detroit, I mean, it was just bad.
Yeah.
Like, it's Detroit. That team was just bad. Tucker Barnhart's not going to hit a lick, but he's a veteran catcher who you can throw out there behind Jan Gomes and just
here's my problem.
He's a stopgap for your prospect. I mean, it's fine. Like,
here's my problem, and you brought it.
He's
up.
not Sean Murphy.
Well,
I mean,
that's a different issue. That's a completely different issue. The problem with Tucker Barnhart is that Jan Gomes didn't hit last year either, and was hoping to get at least a little bit of offense out of one of the catchers this year. And if you're not going to hit, you have to be a really good defensive catcher. Well, Jan Gomes is, by all accounts, a really good defensive catcher. The pitchers rave about him. I have never heard that about Tucker Barnhart in terms of the reputation. Other than the Gold Glove, right? That's what everybody cites. And he hasn't been good at framing. He hasn't been really good defensively. If you're not going to be elite on one side of the ball, whether that be offense or defense, I struggle to see the path here to success. And I guess at the end of the day, it seems to me like the Cubs haven't done enough to really have a path to success anyway. They're going to hover around 500. We'll see what they do after that.
So a couple of things. The Smiley deal, Matt, you said you'd rather have Kluber. Smiley makes the most sense because it allows them to push him to be a swingman in the bullpen, which Kluber hasn't done yet.
Yes.
When the other guys, like if Keegan Thompson, Hayden Wesneski, when they're ready to start, you can throw them in the bullpen as a long reliever, spot starter guy. It's not too much of an overpay.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to throw this one little thing. It's funny, David. Tucker Barnhart played 1 inning at third base this year. So
there it is. That's what it is.
There it
That's
is.
the change. Yep, there it is. Third baseman.
That's what it is.
Acquired.
Got it. Patrick Wisdom who?
Chris Morel's going to get all the innings at third base to start the year, by the way. Little nugget. It's going to happen. Until Rafael Devers takes over in July. What? I didn't say that. Anyway.
Why would a team that's not in contention trade for Rafael Devers?
Man, Matt, it's almost like acquiring good players is the Braves thing. And, doing it at all times is a good idea.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, you can't sign anybody to an extension.
Guess what? Rafael Devers is going to get traded to the Braves for
can't wait
to play shortstop,
double-A pitcher, and
Braves become the Phillies 2.0. Defense be damned.
He's gonna DH, and he's gonna hit 55 home runs, and he's gonna sign a 10-year, $12 million deal.
They're gonna have to leave DH open.
Who are they gonna trade for him? Didn't we just say they have the lowest rated farm system?
Set a double-A pitcher of some kind. I don't know. They always get
Charlie Morton.
They're gonna trade Charlie Morton.
All right, now that we've had enough fun at that expense, let's go to the Pittsburgh Pirates signing Rich Hill to a 1-year, $8 million deal. David, I didn't say it, but if you wanted to, go ahead.
I love Rich Hill, otherwise known as Dick Mountain.
There it is.
And he's been around forever, and I hope he never stops pitching.
Yes.
That's it. That's all I have. There's no analysis here. Rich Hill still pitching. That's a good thing. Hope he does well. He's going to get traded at the deadline.
Yep.
He hasn't actually ever been like terrible either. Like
nope.
Even this year, a 4.27 ERA, but a 3.92 FIP. He's just still so good. He throws like 80% curveballs from like 17 different arm angles. I'm also convinced that he could just turn around and pitch from the right side for some reason.
Probably could. Yeah.
I do wish just for Rich Hill that we had pitchers batting again though, because that was an experience. Let's go ahead and move over to the National League West, and we'll go ahead and start with the Colorado Rockies. They signed Pierce Johnson to a 1-year, $5 million deal.
It's a good opportunity for former Cub Pierce Johnson.
I don't think it is. He's pitching in Colorado.
Yeah, but he'll get to start. He'll get to start is the thing, and Pierce Johnson's got a really good slider.
That's worked out for Herman Marquez.
I feel really.
He's going to go be an ace somewhere. Herman Marquez.
Yeah, he is. But I feel bad for Pierce Johnson because he's going to get his opportunity to start, which in Colorado only means that's more innings to give up home runs because it's Colorado. So,
we'll see. His slider may play a little better in the altitude because of the bite on it, but you never know.
It won't bite there.
Maybe the Colorado needs like a lower spin rate or something, and they'll be able to work with him. Or I don't know. Colorado is in such a horrible place because not only is their ownership completely incompetent, but also the elevation makes it impossible for the pitchers to have any success. Yeah. So it's Colorado. Ugh.
And then even the pitchers that do want to be there, who were part of your franchise, you just let walk in free agency and don't trade them before the deadline, and don't even offer them a deal.
Exactly.
And then you're paying your franchise guy to play for another team. What?
Someone's gonna, trade him for Austin Gomber. I am never going to forgive them.
All right. Let's go to the Arizona Diamondbacks. We talked about them a little bit earlier with the Daulton Varsho trade. I guess we probably should have just mentioned this as everything happened there, but they signed Evan Longoria to a 1-year, $4 million deal. With another $1 million in bonuses. It's extremely interesting. Sorry, Matt, to cut you off there, but I thought it was very interesting that he had an interview the day before he signed that said that he wanted to play for a contender, and then the next day signed with the Diamondbacks.
I mean, I don't understand why he didn't have more interest. I mean, this guy still put up 1.3 WAR last year. He's a good third baseman. He can still play defensively somewhat. I mean, he's not as good as he used to be defensively, but he's adequate, I guess. I know he's dealt with injuries the last couple of years, but I mean, it's a $4 million deal for a guy who put up a 115 WRC plus in 2022 and put up 1.3 WAR in roughly half a season. I mean, I feel like I'm surprised he didn't get a little bit more. And I guess he wanted to play in Arizona. So I don't know why, but it makes sense.
Competitive team.
Yeah,
I mean,
very.
he's going to help him. So
maybe he'll help him, but he's absolutely going to be flipped too at the deadline
probably
to somebody. But it is odd because I'm sure he probably could have went to a contender for even a couple million less potentially.
Y'all got Hall of Famer Evan Longoria as well.
All right, look, we're not going to start this conversation.
Just yes or no. Just yes or no.
I think yes, but
yes, if he maybe one or two more good years, yes.
He's at 54
and
a half right now.
He's getting close.
He's got if he gets to like 350 homers, maybe, then I think he'll get there.
Yep.
But
who knows? All right, let's jump over to the San Francisco Giants, who have responded after their failed Carlos Correa experiments by signing a guy whose medicals are 100% clear in Michael Conforto to a 2-year, $36 million deal with an opt-out. Sorry, that cracked me up. And then who also happens to be a Scott Boras client, the same agent. But then they also signed reliever Taylor Rogers to a 3-year, $33 million deal, reuniting him with his twin brother, Tyler.
Tyler.
I get it mixed up all the time. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyways,
Tyler Rogers is awesome to watch. But Taylor Rogers, they both may have their best year ever now that they're on the same team. I think that's kind of a cool little thing. We'll see how that works. Conforto is the big one here, and I think he's the biggest question mark in the entirety of free agency because he didn't play last year, but he has a history of being a really good baseball player. Not as good as Carlos Correa, obviously, but that also hasn't, been confirmed yet. So who knows what that's going to do. Conforto for 36 is a bit of more than I was expecting because the Cubs were in on him. I was following this one pretty closely. That was a lot more than I think anybody was kind of expecting him to get, but coming off a completely missed season to get $18 million, that just kind of shows you the upside that Conforto does have. And I think he'll hit some balls into the bay.
Yeah, I think Conforto is a little bit of a panic move by the Giants to sign him to that contract because this is a guy who, yes, he's had good years in his career. 2019 was very good. 2017 was very good. 2018 was pretty good. But 2020 was good as in the shortened season too. But 2021 was not great. He played 125 games, had a 106 WRC plus, which for a corner outfielder who's just a average defender, you'd like to see more at the plate than that. And he missed a year, so coming off of a pretty major injury. So that's a pretty big amount of money to spend. And I think the Giants have been in on all these free agents and are just, I think they kind of panicked and said, we got to do it. We got to do something. We got to do something. And this signing doesn't really make that much sense anyways, because they signed Mitch Haniger. They have Jock Peterson. Like, how many left field DH guys do you need? I mean, so
All of them.
yeah, I mean, it's, I guess he'll play right field, but defensively, that outfield's going to be a mess. I mean, I don't love this for them. I think that there's a chance it works out really well if he can, rebound to his, previous form from 2018 through 2020. But I mean, I don't know if I like this at all for them. I mean, I feel like there's a good chance this doesn't work out. And then on the Rodgers thing, I mean, I think that's a fine deal for him. He had a weird 2022 where he was like really, really dominant for a little while. Then he was bad for a while. Then he was dominant again for a while. And then he was bad for a while. So, but his peripherals were good. He had a 4.76 ERA with a 3.31 FIP, 3.26 xFIP. I mean, relievers are getting paid a lot of money this year, and I mean, $11 million a year for a guy who's got a lot of experience in the back end of a bullpen and has put up good peripherals 4 years in a row, 5 years in a row. I mean, it's not bad. So, we'll see what happens there. The Giants are very good with pitchers, and it's cool that he's going to be able to play with his brother. I think that's pretty neat. So.
Yeah, it gives them a really good back into the bullpen with Camilo Duvall and then Taylor Rogers there.
And Tyler. Tyler's a good pitcher when most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time.
I love watching him pitch. He's awesome.
Yeah. He is fun.
Also, the big news there, Tommy La Stella got DFA'd, free agent now. Some team will be very happy.
Yeah, he'll be a good bench bat for somebody.
Dodgers. What? I'm sorry.
I mean,
all the second baseman player. Yeah. We have Michael Busch, so why?
I called him good, by the way.
Well, we have to see. I like Conforto. I think he's one of my favorite players in the league to watch. I've been a lot higher on him. I know I've had the argument with David multiple times about Conforto over the years, but I hate him going to San Francisco to try and rebound his value. Coming off shoulder surgery, going to getting the deal that has the opt out on the 1 year deal, which he's most likely going to take, because any film is probably better than no film of you playing at all coming off shoulder injury. But I just don't think that San Francisco fits his skill set, like with the bay, with the high wall there, with the way the wind swirls, like to be that lefty power hitter. I don't think it really fits what he should be doing there. And then it actually is, I think they've said they're going to play him in left field, so he's going to be switching positions even. And that's even a harder outfield to play there because the wind comes off the bay and pushes the ball all over the place through left field. I just don't love it to the Giants. I think if the Cubs would have made this deal, it would have been fine because I think Wrigley's a much more hitter-friendly ballpark than San Francisco. I think a much better places that he could have went to in general. But I hope that he comes back and proves me wrong because I like the player. I just hate that he went to San Francisco. Not because they're the Giants, but also because they're the Giants. But anyways. Alrighty, anything else you guys want to wrap up on or look forward to?
Well, I think that pretty soon we're going to be out of free agents to talk about. I mean, when the Correa things gets handled, I mean, there's really not many guys left. There's like that second tier free agents of like, guys who, teams that missed own guys like, maybe
might be on the third tier.
Well, that's what I mean. Like that second tier, meaning guys who are kind of like more of role play, like bench bat type guys who, maybe low end regulars. Like maybe if you missed on shortstop, you might go like the Giants and Braves haven't gotten shortstops yet, or the I guess the Red Sox do with Story, but they were trying. You grab an Elvis Andrus, Jose Iglesias type guy. Like that's the tier of free agents we're getting down to. I do think there's a chance we see a couple more big trades. And then, but yeah, I mean, I guess pretty soon, we'll have to pivot gears on the show and kind of start previewing a little bit of what's coming up soon with the, about less than 2 months, we'll be reporting for spring training. So
yeah, we'll have Hall of Fame ballots in there.
Yep.
Yes.
We'll have whatever moves we need to talk about throughout that time. And then we can start jumping into some of the looking forward at things or maybe some fun stuff that we haven't got to yet. We can make some fun episodes up on that. But David, you got anything you're looking forward to outside of the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I was going to say the Hall of Fame discourse is going to be immaculate. Also, Elvis Andrus had 3.5 wins above replacement.
Yeah, he was good last year.
He was actually pretty decent. Found his power stroke with the White Sox. Jurickson Profar's still out there. And then, a couple other guys, but really it is just it'll be a bullpen guys. Those will be the guys to watch. I think you'll see some impact 2023 bullpen arms get signed here in the last couple of weeks of free agency. Beyond that, we're getting ready to start the season. It's gonna be a good time.
Yep. Like Matt said, I think the trade market will start to open up just a little bit more. And we'll see some, maybe not some blockbuster moves, but we'll see, I think, a little bit more activity around the fringe parts for sure. And one thing we didn't even talk about, which we'll have to hit on the next episode, more in depth. We'll have a decision on Trevor Bauer's status this week. He did get his suspension reduced to 194 games. The Dodgers have until Friday to decide if he's on their roster or they're going to release him or trade him or whatever that is. So that will be something we talk about there. Totally even missed it in the thread of everything that happened this week or last week. So that will do it for this episode of the Batflip Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys in a couple weeks.